Notre Dame is on their way to the national championship game. Penn State is in shambles. The college football semifinal was great. We're going to talk about both games. This video will be focused on Notre Dame and their surprising win over Penn State. And the main narrative coming out of this game for Notre Dame is that they belong. They're one of the most talented teams in the country. They're ranked 5 at the end of the year. They would have been in the 14 playoff. The committee absolutely would have shoved them in there over Penn State. They're talented. They're deep. They deserve to be here. They're a legitimate high-level pro. And Marcus Freeman should be a Coach of the Year contender for the next decade. He has the potential to eclipse Nick Saban with how young he is and already being in national championship games. Granted, first head coaching job being in Notre Dame, one of the best funded schools in the country, that kind of helps. Riley Leonard threw 2 interceptions, did not play great in the first half, very good in the second half. He is what elevated this passing attack. He is what got them this win. Notre Dame's front 7 locked in the second half, hindered that elite Penn State rushing attack, and all in all, you have got to feel great if you are a fan of the Fighting Irish. Normally, I'd be a little bit upset by this, but I think Notre Dame has the best shot to beat Ohio, and as you can tell from the hat, that is really what I am looking for. All in all, great performance from Notre Dame. They are clearly a top-tier team, and I don't see them losing anytime soon.
It was an incredibly impressive win from Notre Dame, and I think Indiana deserves an apology with how good this Notre Dame team has been making it to the national championship. The most impressive thing from Notre Dame that I saw in this game was when they're down 10-0 with 2 minutes left in the first half. It felt like Penn State was just going to roll with Riley Leonard being in concussion protocol. They have a backup quarterback in the game. Normally in those situations, what we see at any level of football is the head coach doesn't really trust the backup. They don't trust him to go down the field, lead a scoring drive, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, you got a guy named Steve Angeli, an angel at Notre Dame. You're probably going to have some faith in that.
New Jersey native, potential future Giants 3rd or 4th string quarterback. He trusted him to lead that drive. He pushed the ball down the field. They got 3 points, and then immediately out of halftime, they go down and lead a long touchdown drive with Riley Leonard back on the field. I think that speaks volumes of Marcus Freeman's coaching ability, his leadership ability, playing situational football. That game had a great opportunity to get really ugly where we were going to see Penn State win by 20 or 30 points. Instead, that's not what happened, and Notre Dame was able to lead another 10-point swing in their favor.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a hard time really blowing out any of the teams remaining in the college football playoffs because there are 4 elite defenses. I don't think it could have gotten that ugly. Certainly if the offense had just left their defense out on the field, maybe that happens. I didn't see that as a real possibility. When you look at the individual performances from this game, Jeremiah Love's box score does not jump out at you, but he had 2 of the more telling plays of this game. The first one, which is obviously going to be talking about, shrugging off Abdul Carter and 2 other Penn State defenders on his way for that short but long rushing touchdown. That was an incredible effort play, a play from a guy who will be playing on Sundays. And you look at him hurdle somebody late in the game when they are trying to work their way downfield into field goal range. It was only for a 1-yard game, but multiple times Love had come out and said, yeah, I'm not going to hurdle anybody. I'm dealing with a knee injury. That's not in my best interest medically. And then he's out there putting his body on the line, final possession of the game to get his team to win, get him an extra yard, get out of bounds, stop the clock. That tells me all I need to know about this Notre Dame team, all I need to know about Love. They are locked in. They are set on winning this national championship. They are truly focused. Defensively, missing their best player for a majority of the year did not hinder the secondary one bit. Xavier Watts deserved to be a first-team All-American. He deserves to be a first-round pick. He is a special player, both in coverage, stopping the run, phenomenal. Their front 7, electric. They are going to be able to slow down Ohio State. I truly believe that. Penn State's passing attack may have played a big part in that. We will get into Penn State's many issues shortly, but defensively, one of the best games we've seen all year. Eventually gave up some points after being left out in the field for a long time in the second half, but that's all defense. This was truly a phenomenal team win and a phenomenal defensive showing. The best defensive game we have seen in the entirety of the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I spoke to it already with their effort, their ability to push through adversity. They had 2 starting offensive linemen go down with injury. Their star running back is battling a knee injury, not 100%, and then he's breaking 5 tackles to get to the goal line and score a touchdown in a huge moment 2 yards out. And then later in the game, he's not for even that many yards, he's jumping over people. This Notre Dame team, the amount of effort they showed in the face of adversity to win this game, I think was incredible. I think at points it was very evident that Penn State maybe had more high-end talent on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, but that just didn't matter to Notre Dame. They played better in the big moments and situations that mattered. It didn't matter that Penn State was averaging over 5 yards a carry. Notre Dame came back play in and play out. Like that 10-point swing, like I mentioned earlier, even though it looked like things could go really bad, they came back and put those 10 points back up on the board.
Well, 4.9 yards a carry, but yes.
Including
now,
Tyler Warren, it was 5.2.
I'm looking at the box score right
Well,
now.
If you factor in the quarterback, but then sacks also.
That is, in fact, how they score those in college football. Anyway, looking ahead at Penn State, if you told me Penn State was going to run for 200 yards, you told me their offensive and defensive lines were both going to play better than Notre Dame's, I would assume they won this game by 2 scores, and they are preparing for the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're not. They had some pretty real issues offensively, namely 2. Drew Allar is the first and foremost issue on this team. He is what held them back. He is why they did not win this game. He was inaccurate all night. He did not have a particularly strong presence in the pocket. He threw 3 interceptions. 2 were wiped away due to penalties. One of those penalties was incredibly ticky-tack on Tyler Warren, and he is what led this offense down. Kaytron Allen, phenomenal game. Warren, 7 for 8, I believe, 75 yards. Could have been far more if he was getting the ball thrown to him in an accurate manner. No wide receiver caught a pass. That reflects poorly on the wide receivers. But I went back, tracked down some all-22 footage. They were getting open on plenty of throws. Maybe not plenty, but some. Allar was not finding them. This was a terrible performance from Drew. And looking at James Franklin, I get Notre Dame did everything they could to take away the run in the second half. They sold out. They filled that box. At some point, you just got to stick to your strength. You got to keep trying to pound it in there. Nick Singleton had 3 touchdowns. Could have been 4 if he didn't get a ball underthrown to him on the goal line. Incredibly efficient night from him. Kaytron Allen, big, explosive runner. Eventually, you just keep feeding him. He was going to pop one. He didn't. That is on Franklin for abandoning the run too soon, not being willing to tough it out, and trying to get Drew Allar to win in a game where he was clearly not mentally ready for. Bad game from Allar, bad game from Franklin, further feeding into the idea that Franklin cannot win the big one.
I think the failure to get any receiver the ball in this game is more of a reflection on the coaching staff, and it maybe being a poorly coached game combined with their unwillingness to just run the ball 60 times, because we saw in the Ohio State game, receivers didn't catch a lot of passes. In this game, a receiver didn't catch 1 pass. When this Penn State team is forced to coach under pressure, they don't make the smartest decisions. If you know you don't have receivers that are of high quality that you can get the ball to, and you know you really only have your tight end who you like pushing the ball down the field to, why are you not throwing it 10 to 12 times and running it 60 times, especially when I just mentioned between Nick Singleton, Tyler Warren, and Kaytron Allen, you were averaging 5.2 yards a carry. Every time they touched the ball, they were getting yards on the ground. The fact that this game had an even time of possession, I think, is embarrassing for Penn State, the way they were running the ball, and they had the opportunity, if they wanted to just control the game on the ground, much like, I know I'm going to make a comparison to the NFL here, when the Packers lost Jordan Love early in the season, and they had Malik Willis. They won games throwing the ball just 12 to 15 times and handing the ball off to Josh Jacobs and company 30 to 40 times in a game. That is what Penn State should have done, and they didn't do it.
If you are able to put everybody in the box and your quarterback still cannot find any receivers, still cannot find his tight end, still cannot find his running back out of the backfield, that is not really a coaching issue. That is a not having a guy who can step up in the moments issue. Again, you can maybe project that on the receivers, but Singleton and Allen both got motioned outside and lined up at wide receiver. They had talented, speedy, quick players with good hands lined up outside, running routes at a crisp manner and catching the ball, or excuse me, not catching the ball because Drew Allar could not find them. Individually, and I mentioned the 2 interceptions which got wiped off due to penalties. I mentioned the drop touchdown doesn't even feel like the right thing to call it. A terrible throw to Nick Singleton down near the goal line, which cost Penn State 4 points. They get that. They win the game. Nick Singleton has 4 touchdowns instead of 3 in this game. That final play of the game is just pathetic from Drew Allar. He has a perfectly clean pocket. His guard has picked up the linebacker, is in front of him. He just drifts backwards. There is no formation, no play, nothing which should ever justify a quarterback kind of lackadaisically saddling back into the blitz, making it impossible for his offensive line to block for him. Then, when he gets the pressure he has earned for himself, throwing the ball away over the middle of the field. That's about 5 different quarterback cardinal sins. A really bad performance from Drew Allar. He is going back to college, assuredly. Probably going back to Penn State, because I don't think they can get anybody better out of the portal, and he's got some athletic upside, but this was just terrible. I would blame Allar 100 times more than I would blame the coaching staff. They had some issues, but Drew Allar was their biggest issue.
I think it's an even 33-33-33 split. Drew Allar did not play good.
Hold on, who's the other 33? Are you
the wide receivers?
There is no way you're putting 33% of the blame on the wide receivers.
They didn't catch a pass.
Yeah, they didn't get accurate
open.
balls thrown to them, and yeah, they got open. Drew Allar stinks.
No,
the
they
second
did not
it
play.
became a possibility, the New York Giants would draft Drew Allar. The second we started hearing positive
Where
things
did
from
the
Joe
Giants
Shane
come into
out
this?
You started defending Drew Allar. You are
I'm
so
not
predictable.
defending him.
You are absolutely
I
defending
said he played very poorly, and he
You
played
are trying
bad.
to ascribe even blame to him as his wide receivers. Maybe you put that on the coaching. I don't. The receivers got open. Not a ton, but they got open. Allar couldn't find them. Allar stinks.
They didn't get open.
They got open.
And if you're just prescribing all of the blame on to Drew Allar, I think you're completely ignoring the coaching staff and their response. They're the ones scheming up the plays. They're the one in practice. You don't know how Drew Allar's coached. How do you know who he's coached to go through his progressions? When you have receivers that don't catch a pass all season long, we know it's been a major question mark for Penn State, and I think 3 tight ends caught passes. That is a reflection on the receiver room and the inability of the coaching staff to implement that into the game plan, which if they knew that was such a weak point and the run game was so successful, they should have made mid-game adjustments to throw the ball 12 times probably to just Tyler Warren and run the ball the rest of the time.
You got to try and throw yourself back into a game when your offense does nothing because the defense gets to stack the box and make you pass it. At some point, a coaching staff has to do what the defense is dictating if they are selling everything out to stop them. That's why Michigan beat Ohio State. They had about 5 guys in the box every play, which is why Ohio kept trying to run up the middle despite Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham being absolute studs. You have to respond or you are just going to lose the game in dramatic fashion. Your offense is going to do nothing. You have to try and take what the defense gives you. Also, I'm having enough of the wide receivers. Maybe blame them individually, fine. But there were plays, as I mentioned, Kadron Allen and Singleton lined up outside as wide receivers and run good, clean, effective routes and get open. They are essentially wide receivers. They're very talented wide receivers and don't get used because Drew Allar stinks. Maybe he can get better over the offseason. Maybe he can capitalize on that 6'5" frame. But a majority of the blame goes on him. It's the beauty of being the franchise quarterback at one of these big schools.
What'd you call the Notre Dame secondary?
Pretty good. Elite.
The best secondary in college football, and you're asking a wide receiver room that has been lackluster all year long and running backs to get open against the best secondary in college football. And
yeah, I am asking you to do that, and they did
and they
that,
don't have any of the.
Didn't.
No, you're making things up.
I'm not making things up. Are you going to tell me that I am wrong that Singleton and Katron did not line up outside multiple times? Katron's only pass he caught was outside as I believe the ex-receiver. They schemed up some stuff. Maybe the individual wide receiver room fine, but Drew Allar had receiving options available to him and he did not capitalize on them. If you want to specifically harp on the wide receivers, fine. Pin the blame on them. You'll be pinning it on the Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton in 2 years when Allar's throwing these duds on the MetLife turf.
The only reason you're going as hard as you are on Drew Allar is because he was being brought up in the first round quarterback discussion, and the Giants were in that discussion.
No, the only reason I'm going as hard on him is he goes to Penn State, and I don't like Penn State. So I'm natural. Trust me, if we were doing this with Will Howard, it wouldn't matter what draft grade you had on him. I would be absolutely torturing him too. Drew Allar played a terrible game. A majority of the blame falls on him. Maybe you want to shift some to Franklin, by all means, fine. But he was the stinky commander-in-chief. Allar had an interception wiped off the board of touchdown twice already. Here's the third time. Throws up a prayer to Tyler Warren in triple coverage. The defender gets a pass interference call, even though I think Warren initiated contact because the defender has back turned. It was just like this the entire time. That's pretty marginal to me. Ultimately, it did not cost Notre Dame the game, but if it did, I'd be complaining about that a lot more. That was not a good penalty call by the referees.
I think it clearly was a penalty. Anytime you have the defender running through the receiver, in this case the tight end, who's looking back to the ball, and then you have someone else come underneath and pick the ball off, that is clearly a pass interference penalty. I don't really understand why people were complaining about it that much, especially since Notre Dame went on to win the game. But
because Warren stopped his momentum and then came back into the guy who was allegedly running into him. The two met each other. It was also a terribly thrown ball.
Granted, I think by the letter of the law, that clearly is a penalty. On the flip side, maybe it's something where down the road we, in the NFL especially, where if the ball's that severely underthrown and it's that poor of a pass that you don't give a
is the
award a pass
defensive player
interference
going to
penalty?
get the benefit of the doubt in the NFL when that's
That we know
happening?
that's not going to happen in the NFL.
Yeah, it's not going to happen in the NFL.
In college football, maybe it can happen.
The refs tried to rob Notre Dame. They failed. Penn State stinks. Drew Allar stinks. Enjoy your bachelor degree in gender studies or whatever you're taking at Penn State, because you're getting to finish it now.
And looking ahead now to Notre Dame playing in the national championship, it feels like they would have a legitimate chance if fully healthy with how talented this team is and how hard they play. But with Jeremiah Love playing with that knee injury against that Ohio State front seven, we mentioned how poor Penn State's wide receiver room is, but look, Notre Dame's wide receiver room is not that much better. They didn't have one receiver go over 460 yards this year, so it's not like they have a ton of talent in
They
there.
got a running quarterback, though. Like, Riley Leonard did not come there to throw the football. He came there to run, and then maybe if things go south, if they got him boxed in, fine, one of my wide receivers can go catch it.
Yeah, they don't have a great wide receiver room. Ohio State has a good secondary. They have a great defense, and I think it's going to be hard for them with two offensive line injuries. Not that much. They're not that much of a threat to really push the ball down the field consistently. Running back room's banged up. I think it's going to be really hard for them to compete.
Oh, ye of little faith. You could say the exact same thing about Michigan. Say, oh, well, they got no wide receivers. Their O-line's mediocre. Their quarterback does not believe in the forward pass. And look what happened. Ohio State is a fundamentally beatable team, but we'll get into that in the next video.
Speaking of the next video, stay tuned for it. Recapping Ohio State versus Texas. Like the video, subscribe, use code Thicc on Underdog, and we'll see you in the next one.